Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I'm so grateful that you're here. This is the Daily Medicine Transmission for July 13th, 2021, and the growth of true understanding is the title of today's transmission. The original raw transmission that came came through this morning was, oh, you can't hide from yourself, can you? And I just thought that was a little bit too raw and a little bit too, I don't know, foreboding. And I thought that this would go, I thought that this would go over a little bit better than the judgy, you can't hide from yourself, but it is really true. And the thing is the moon is now in Virgo, and I love the moon in Virgo personally. I have very strong Virgo in my chart. I love Virgos because they get shit done, right? And they know how to get shit done. So welcome everyone. Welcome back to my subscribers and my regular viewing audience and those of us who are creating this community together. I mean, there are all these tiny communities that are being created all over the place, and they have their place, and it's wonderful. And I'm just grateful that we have our own little corner of reality here that we can all come to and commune together. And if you're new here, welcome. Thanks for joining us. And as always, whenever you comment, like, subscribe, and share, I really hate to, this is not really about me, pushing and thumping myself, but it does make a difference, and it signals to the AI that this message and this transmission and this content is actually worth spreading to a larger audience. And there's no shortage of information out there, but if you do find this content inspiring or helpful and you want to share it, that's a great way to do it, is to make it more visible by your interaction with the content. And this is my offering. I offer these transmissions every single day during the week, and the astrology reports on a weekly basis as my offering to the collective, because it's so important that we're all sharing our gifts right now and our talents, our strengths, what we came here to do, because this is the time, is it not? So there's a couple things we should talk about today. Of course, we will get into the astrology with the moon coming into Virgo, which means she's going to be in opposition to Jupiter. The big news of today, the main weather feature is Venus and Mars coming into a conjunction with each other in Leo, really exemplifying that sanctification that came along with the new moon in Cancer, right? And it does feel like as much as there is so much seemingly going on, I don't want to say it's going to be a slow week, because I can't really gauge that, but what I do have a sense is that things are really going to slow down in a way that allows us to get anchored and to get grounded. And with the moon in Virgo, it's really time to get our emotional landscape and our feeling-based tools, right? Our adaptability, purified, right? It's time to get down into the dirt and really start to do the work, and on an emotional and feeling based level. So it's time to get ourselves organized on the inside with the moon in Virgo. So we'll talk about that, of course, with the astrology. We have today's intuitive message that's going to come through as usual with the cards. And I'll be sharing that with you because there is so much optimism that we can tap into right now, and a really strong sensitivity to cosmic coherence, that if we can tap into it and really tap into it, we will see how important it is that we are in the world but not of it. And we talked about this yesterday with that the epitome of the Capricorn energy, the dark side of Saturn, with the devil card coming out as our effect, really being challenged and really bumping up against our self-preservation and the materialism that goes along with all of those Capricornian aspects. And so how do we hold on to that? How do we ride the sacred geometry of nature out in a fully conscious way, and be goal-oriented and ambitious, and see what we can create together when we do come together and cooperate and operate under the same belief systems, the same banner of collective values? How can we still do that without getting trapped? Well, part of it is realizing that Capricorn and the material world is not the end. And when it is the end, you can justify any of your actions. And so we're going to talk about Aquarius and Pisces today, just because we have a moon in Virgo, which is in opposition to Pisces. We have the star card is the center of our reading again today. So this has been a theme that has been coming back around. And there's something that I want to bring up. I didn't intend to, but it does actually fall into this theme of the Virgo moon. And really, we want to exemplify, we want to activate and really bring up to the surface in some ways the natural energy that is responsible for everything, right? The ability to connect directly to source through the union of our opposition, right? Venus being the divine feminine, Mars being the divine masculine, right? The Mars being the ruler of Aries, right? That cardinal fire, whereas Venus is the ruler of Taurus, the medium of our growth. When they come together, it is, in fact, a very alchemical process of unification in the sign of our sovereignty and our creative expression and our passion. So these types of things are really going to be on the surface today, which is why it's really important with our moon in Virgo that we are able to be in the world, but not of it, and be able to activate and live in these energies without getting caught in the trap of the materialism. So there is one thing that I want to draw attention to. It was a conversation that came out earlier today, just in like a Telegram chat room, the difference between discernment and judgment. And I think that with this moon in Virgo and the fact that the original raw transmission was you can't hide from yourself, really brings this concept around, because this was a conversation that came up a year and a half ago really strongly in this first like almost fracturing or bifurcation within this so-called New Age spiritual community. I'm not even sure what those monikers even mean anymore. I think that they're really now they're kind of whatever they mean. But what it did is fracture people in one camp that was discerning and another that wanted to take that extra step into judgment. And so I think that knowing the difference is really important. And boy, did I get some pushback on this, because people don't like their conceptions of reality challenged at all, especially when we feel entitled to our judgment. So I wanted to bring this up, and it fits so well into where Saturn is right now, which is the ultimate judge, right? Is it representing the Capricornian nature, is the full stop, right? It is the final stop on this train of material reality, which is you can't get past it. This is, in fact, the judgment of time and space and material reality. Everything goes back to source. And when you recognize that there is a difference between discernment and judgment, it really is a surrender type of moment. This is the Piscean archetype, right? Where we let go, we surrender, we allow ourselves to embrace compassion and unconditional love and forgiveness, while at the same time not necessarily letting our boundaries go totally fall by the wayside, so that we are just allowing people to walk all over us. You can still discern people's actions. You can still shine light on their actions. You can know what's right for you in the face of those actions. You can speak truth to those actions, right? Those are all part of the discernment process. The judgment comes when you feel entitled to cast the stone, right? And the growth of true understanding is this ability to actually go within the darkness and within ourselves, right? In that Virgo archetype that is represented, as much as it's represented by the purity of the Vestal Virgins and the celibacy and the purification, discipline, all of those things. Remember, the Hermit also is this Virgo representation in a way that, in itself shows what we need to do in order to get to that level of purity and understanding and really conditioning ourselves to be a true vessel of service when filled with, the light of source, basically. So and part of that is not necessarily pushing people away. It's the active introversion out of the participation in the material world and getting into the essence of who we are and not being afraid to go down into the darkness to address what our limitations are, to address where our shadow is, and to organize things appropriately. This is the feminine signature of the mercurial archetype, or Hermes. Gemini is the masculine. It is the light itself, right? It is the light of consciousness. It is gnosis. But once you get stuck there, right, when you can't move past that, or even get into the Virgo archetype, you are stuck in, again, the light in and of itself, rather than bringing it down into some sort of humble, purified container that allows you to be of service to humanity, which is the walking as Christ, right? Opposite of Pisces. Again, these two aspects are inseparable from each other. So the difference between discernment and judgment is really important, because where Saturn is positioned right now in Aquarius, retrograde, right? What are those retrogrades if not opportunities to take that energy and to turn it back in on ourselves and really pay attention to how it is expressing itself within our own inner experience. Everybody is on their own step on this staircase that is leading all to the same place. We are all equal in the eyes of God. We are all children of God. We're all equal children of source, however you characterize that. We are all equal and we all are divine. And when we can recognize that about each other, we also can accept that everybody is in a different place on their journey. People's actions may completely repulse us, and it's tempting to want to be the judge, but we are not the judge, right? This is when we surrender that judgment up to source. We surrender that up to nature, to karma. And this is where people get frustrated. And I'll tell you what, Chiron's going to station retrograde in the next day or so. Well, it's definitely going to, that was Pallas Athena, my bad. Chiron, oh no, it is, on the 15th is going to station retrograde, right? So if you think you're frustrated now with the slow movement of things, be forewarned that it will get heavier and it'll get more intense, and it will require us to turn that lens of our own wounding and our own victim narrative within and really look at it, because it's coming. It's definitely building in momentum right now, which is why this new moon was so important, to really be clear with ourselves what it is, what productive relationships within us that we want to be sanctified, to be made holy, so that when it's exemplified by Venus and Mars today, right, really brought into the stream of our passion and our creative expression and our sovereignty, when it's brought into a actual form here, and brought to our awareness in some ways, and certainly brought into reality, that we are not, we are not getting caught in that cycle of judgment. We feel very entitled. And this is coming from a Sag stellium, right? The judgment is a Sag signature across the board, right? And for those Sag people out there, just know that I'm right there with you. This has not been easy work to let go of entitlement to judge people. And I think the most humbling act is to let go of that judgment in order to surrender to God as the judge, right? You let that burden go of having to judge everybody that's doing something that you don't think they should be doing, even the most horrific things. It gets harder the more awful people are, and it takes real work. It really does. It is not easy. And that's why most people don't make it, right? And they get stuck in the Gemini part, the gnosis part, the light part, rather than the humbling, getting down into their own darkness part, in order to really look at and acknowledge the suffering of the world and see how this plays itself out within us. We're all capable. We're all capable of being awful, right? It's part of the shadow. And for as much as I think shadow work in the New Age community has also been hijacked, it's important that we take this time to really go within and acknowledge, do we know the difference between discernment and judgment? Are we harboring entitlement to judge people based on their actions without doing the work within ourselves to purify our own intentions and a vessel? Once you do that, it makes it a lot... It's just lighter. You're lighter. You're creating space within you in order for you to actually be filled with love and compassion. And it's not to say that you let people walk all over you. I mean, as a person who has suffered trauma as a child, I will say that like it took a long time to forgive my abusers. But once I did and gave that burden up, it was so freeing, and it was there was just so much light that is able to be part. And if we really are serious about this whole mantra about, your vibe and your resonance is what creates and manifests reality, then we actually have to do the work in order to do that. And when you harbor judgment, as tempting as it is, and as much as we feel entitled to cast that stone, just know that all those stones weigh you down. They do. Oh boy. So let's get into the reading so we can get some optimism here. And I'm going to talk more about that in a written post, I think, later today in terms of Saturn, because Saturn in Aquarius is sitting at this position right now of... we're all on our staircase, right? So we have a couple options. We can point our fingers at people that are different positions or be in judgment of those in different positions. Or what we can do, it's just an option, right? It's just a suggestion. I'm not saying that you should or shouldn't do anything, because we all have to come to this on our own, right? There's no way that somebody can just tell you what to do. I mean, that's over, right? That is completely over. It's really about sharing our own experiences and allowing people to see if they resonate or not with them. But we do have to, I would say that the real wall right here is acknowledging everybody's on their own step, so we can help each other, right? We can offer assistance, and we can also be just as okay when they slap our hand away and they're like, I don't need your help. I am perfectly fine where I'm at. And you're like, all right, bro. All right, I'm right here then, and it's all good. We're going up the same staircase together to the same place, and there's a natural state of progression in the development of our consciousness and the evolution of our soul, basically. And so we can't necessarily push that aside. And in fact, Saturn is making that pretty rock solid. So let's look at the reading for today. I'm going to check in with the stream real quick, make sure it's all healthy and good. All right, guys. So as we see, we got the star at the center of our reading with the Queen of Wands here. We have the Six of Cups. These are all energies that have come out very recently, different positions, and certainly with not fully expressed. But I do see here that we are in a position now to really embrace this optimism, this guiding light of the star, the sensitivity to cosmic coherence. And when we and there's a doubling of this with the Lookout, right? These two cards are number 17. So let's start at the beginning here, because it's always good to start at the beginning so that you have context for what's going on. So here's our Six of Cups, pleasure, right? The Sun in Scorpio. So what's going on today? Well, Antares, the south node of the moon, the lunar south node, Juno retrograde. And that would also mean the north node of the moon as well. They have now moved into position where they are exactly in conjunction with Antares, so Juno, asteroid Juno, and the lunar south node, plus the lunar north node is in direct conjunction now with Aldebaran. So they are all in the same degree of this opposition. So we talked about Antares before, the heart of the scorpion, and the pleasure that comes out of a very harmonious and realization of consciousness, right? This doesn't come without some deep pain and disappointment when we come out of it. This is why it's pleasure, because we can feel the difference between the disappointment and the pain and the loss and what we've learned of the truth of the power dynamics in our relationships, of being betrayed, right? Asteroid Juno really holds that resonance of trust and contractual obligations and commitment, and the betrayal. Each betrayal begins with trust, right? And we have to acknowledge that, and when we leave ourselves open to that, when we engage in that relationship, we always are in a position where that could be the reality, that we will be betrayed. And some people never get over that, so they never end up trusting, which is a vulnerability that allows for intimacy in relationships. And that's where we get the true pleasure, right? So we come out of this pain. And so realization of our consciousness, a reconciliation of opposites, put a pin in that, because we're going to keep talking about that reconciliation of opposites. Deep emotions that have passed through the depths of pain and fear. This is our causal factor for this message. So we're experiencing this. We've come out of some deep pain, and we have a moment here of really embracing the harmony and balance that we have really earned as a result of going through this process, this dark night of the soul that is really a lot of disappointment. And we do return to inner source in order to find this balance and this reconciliation. It's not coming from outside of us. It's the result of learned lessons on an emotional level. So this is our causal factor, reaching into, and this came up last week too, as the heart of the moment, right? And that was really close to around the time that this Syrian blast was really coming through as well. So there is a connection to that as well, but it also does speak to the connection with the South Node and asteroid Juno over the heart of the Scorpion. Can we, and this is suggesting that if we have learned something, if we have reconciled some things, if we can be discerning without judging, and also the balance and the harmony within, and it reaches here with the star, well, we'll see what the outcome is. So we know the star is the Aquarian card. We've talked about this before a lot of times. Hope and trust. It's a guiding light, right? She's bathing this character here, this humanoid form that is really meant to look feminine here, is bathing herself in starlight. Sensitive understanding of cosmic coherence. The sun, which is Leo in opposition to Aquarius, is our solar energy, our sun, right? But our sun is a star, and and one of billions just in this galaxy, right? Who knows? It's probably incalculable in terms of how many stars there could be in this entire known universe. So it is the guiding light. There's a sensitive understanding to cosmic coherence. There is optimism and trust that comes with this card, because it is the energy that moves through a healthy collective that of stars, right? We know that, like I said, the sun is our star, and that is the Leo archetype. In opposition to that is Aquarius. Our star, our life giver, is just one piece. It's one node of this vast network throughout our whole universe, and we can trust the process, right? Trust the process of how these stars develop and how they live and what they provide. That's the other thing. These stars provide, and this is so beautiful with Venus and Mars today coming together in Leo in this opposition. It brings it down into an individual expression, but at the same time, it allows for us in a very almost very direct way to take that and apply it to a much larger picture, right, of trust and optimism, a guiding light at the center here, at the heart of the matter. Now, what's interesting is that number 17 is also part of this reading now, is part of this vertical axis of power. So the star card is 17, the lookout is 17. It's where we are subconsciously rooted. It's what's running in the background. It's not part of our awareness, but it's certainly informing our conscious awareness, and it allows for us to draw our personal power from this place, much like the nadir in the astrological chart. or that fourth house cusp, right? The IC. So the lookout is kind of the same idea in terms of you are able to keep this larger perspective, right? The ship is burning underneath the individual in the crow's nest. And what do they have binoculars on. They're looking out to see, and they are wearing a purple shirt, which does suggest this higher level of consciousness, right? They're lifted above the burning ship. They have these binoculars on, so there's this idea of a vast sight, and this purple indigo energy has definitely got a third eye connection, right? So there are challenging situations and a battle raging around us, right? We know this is happening. This is not news, but it is getting more so. And this is why taking the time now, this week, to really get anchored, to bring these fractured parts of ourselves together, to take advantage of the moon in Virgo, for as much as it may be a little intense for some people, to get into the underworld of who we are and really organize ourselves, because at the root here is this challenging situation that we know is all around us. Everything is burning all around us. And we could experience a sudden fall, a sudden loss of position. It's inevitable that this ship is going to burn. There's nothing that's really going to put this out at this point. And I feel like that this is not unknown to many of us at this point. And we are looking out at what it is that we can go to next. Where are we going to go next? Having a backup plan is really helpful in a very practical way when you have this card. So depending on where you find it positioned and what type of reading you're doing, this could point to an actual loss of position. But in terms of a collective reading, we are seeing here that we are rooting ourselves in our ability to really have this much vaster awareness and Uranus does rule Aquarius as a planetary ruler, right? And so does Saturn, but Uranus is the collective third eye. So we are also in this position collectively where we're attempting to, as a result of what is burning underneath us. It's almost like without this fire being lit under us, literally, in this case, a fire being lit under our ass, it forces us to utilize our intuition and these third eye type of energies in order to see out into what the next step is and to have an awareness that is beyond what is right in front of us. And this is the same with the star, the trust, the guiding light, the optimism, the sensitivity to how everything is organized in the universe, and trusting source in a very basic way, surrendering to this, but also at the same time being a conscious participant in this process as well. Because where our conscious awareness is, at the top of our awareness, right, is the Three of Keys, the chess game, but it's reversed, right? So we do know that the conflict that this represents, and, there are lots of ways to look at the chessboard as the matrix itself, right? And you have these two opposing forces that are engaged in a strategic battle. And something to consider today is that and I'll talk about it more with the astrology, is that asteroid Vesta is in a direct opposition today to Pallas Athena, who is going to station retrograde tomorrow. Asteroid, these are two asteroids that represent goddesses from the Greek and Roman pantheon. So Vesta in Virgo is in an opposition to Pallas, the goddess of strategy in war, in Pisces, and is about to station retrograde tomorrow. So it's like, we know that there is this political conflict and it's becoming untenable. We're starting to really realize that this back and forth of black and white, right and left, right, masculine, feminine, straight or gay, whatever, right? You can go on forever with these dichotomies. They're endless. What we're realizing is the battle itself between these two polarities is untenable, and it's unlikely to change anytime soon. I just had a conversation with somebody yesterday. She might even be on here. And I don't want to disclose too much of the conversation, but the general theme of it was, I'm coming to the conclusion that, some things and some people are just not going to change. And this exemplifies this so much in this position, in this reversal, that you come to the conclusion that the people or the institutions involved in this political conflict, whatever it is, and politics is embedded in our personal lives as much as it is out there in the government, and that people are unlikely to change without like a huge impetus to do that. And sometimes some people don't change, right? And their lives end up reflecting that unwillingness to change. And positions may topple for sure. And it's time to walk away. We're starting to realize that it's time to walk away from this constant battle, whatever it is, even if it's a battle with people that you're supposedly on the same side with that just can't, there's a battle of ego of like, I'm right. No, I'm right. No, I'm right. I'm right. We want to disengage at least emotionally from this position. And again, the moon in Virgo really supports this process because it forces us to take all of that energy and do the work within, right? We're not really engaging other people in what they're doing or not doing and getting caught up in our own judgment about it. We are looking at our own limitations. We're looking at our own needs for self-care. We're looking at how we can address the conflict within ourselves. And so it's time to walk away, at the very least, disengage emotionally from this constant battle, because it'll create space in your life for actual peace and calm and contentment. If you continue to be like just this constant battle, it just takes up disk space, and you can't let anything new come in. You can't allow more light to come in. And believe me, light wants to come in. Venus and Mars in Leo today, light wants to come in, and it's bringing us an opportunity to identify ourselves with that light coming in, and letting it infuse us. But we can't if we are still caught in the conflict of Venus and Mars. They're coming together. They're not squaring off with each other. They're coming together in a very potent connection. You can really extrapolate on how this can be seen in terms of these masculine and feminine qualities coming together in the sign that represents the release of the Kundalini. This is what Tantra is actually for. And that's something for a different conversation. But you do know what I mean here is that this alchemical process starts here, but we can't see it as a battle. Otherwise, we don't even allow ourselves to get there. Now, when we take into account all of these energies, what we can expect is really coming into our power, right? The combining of opposing elements. When we have trust and optimism in the big picture, when we have our ability to be the lookout for and have this really strong awareness on a third eye level of what's going on energetically, right? You see that we come into our power. Here's the pine cone. That is the pineal gland on the top of her staff. She's got her hand on top of this leopard, really signaling that she is the one that is controlling this energy. And she doesn't have to do much. She's barely touching. It's just a hand right here that's exemplifying this word I can't let go of today, exemplifying this real dominance and control over these really raw and intense energies that is represented by this animal. And then all of the rays of the sun, you see that the bird is up top here, and she is large, right? She is towering, and she's got the Statue of Liberty type of vibe going on. But the pineal gland is really sticking out to me today. And this is the balancing, the combining of opposite elements. Excuse me, the queen is the water, so the emotional and the tender and the sensitive aspect, along with the fire, which is the emotion and transformation and the passion and inspiration. These two things come together. This is unstoppable. So we really do have quite a bit of support as long as we really root ourselves in and to embrace in our hearts this guiding optimism and trust, because it's time to start preparing ourselves rather than continuing to battle ourselves with these opposing energies. And we are aware of that now. I mean, it's becoming very obvious to many of us that this political conflict is untenable. And in fact, it's a lot of times it's being intentionally created in order to siphon your energy from actually coming to a place of real peace and contentment, right? It keeps us locked into fighting each other. So when it comes to the lookout, so the Buddha prepares, here we go, right? This is a time of inner preparation. People they don't like it, right? And with Pallas Athena, the goddess of strategy, stationing retrograde tomorrow in Pisces, I would really recommend that you start to embrace this retrospective about strategy, because we're really being asked and invited in a lot of ways to do this inner preparation. And people, I know, all you have to do is just engage out there in the conversation, and people are really just tired of waiting. But we have to fortify ourselves so much more than people realize. They are waiting for things to happen outside of us. They're getting frustrated. They are like, it's just this constant over and over. And it's about the inner prep, right? It's about getting within and garnering your own personal power. And part of that too, the platypus, it says stop complaining and focus your attention on the blessings in your life, right? While you're still sitting here going, why hasn't it happened yet? Why hasn't this happened yet? Why hasn't anything changed? I'm getting so tired of things not changing and I'm going to force them. You are kind of complaining, right? And then have at it, right? We're all entitled and free to just express ourselves. But what I would suggest or invite you to do is to maybe focus on what you do have. This ability to see the bigger picture, this ability to be kind of above this dumpster fire and use these organs of heightened awareness to see where we're going, so that you can start to resonate with it. And that's how you attract it to you as a result of you being on the same vibration. Just like in music, right? If you are in resonance or in harmony, it moves through your body in this beautiful way, right? If you play music, you listen to music, you're really into music and acoustics in general, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And when you're in dissonance, right, it's just like off-putting. So we have the capacity to do this, but we have to actually vibe with it in order to bring it to us. And the more you resist and you complain and you're like, it's not here, the more you're pushing it away. I mean, and trying to impart this to people is really challenging. So this is what's coming through. So I don't even have to do it necessarily. I'm just giving you the transmission that is just like, stop complaining, focus on what you do have, realize that you have to do this work inside of you, prepare yourself, get yourself into a space where you can receive these blessings. And if you really want to get to where we're going, you have to be able to have that awareness in this collective third eye type of way, in order to see where we're going. Because otherwise, all you see and all you feel is the fire under your feet. And a lot of people are feeling that. And for different reasons, right? So, and the thing about the platypus, it is so bizarre of an animal in terms of all of the different attributes it has, but it's completely adapted to its environment. It has webbed feet, it's got a bill, but it's a mammal, but it lays eggs, and it's completely adapted to survive in its environment. And the platypus is not complaining about all of these seemingly strange, strange things that it has, right? It has all of these attributes that are seemingly very weird. So focus on what you do have, right? Get into that zone of gratitude, and it will help with all of this. And again, the inner preparation, right? It is time to get into the meat of the inner world and start working on ourselves. And the moon in Virgo is really going to assist with that. And of course, the tortoise, right? you're too fragmented, do whatever it takes to get grounded. We do realize that this emotional conflict or political conflict is untenable, that is unlikely to change. It's time to walk away. And sometimes it's hard to see that if we are fragmented all over the place. So the tortoise, again, slowing down, being steady, getting grounded. These are all practices that are going to help us realize that this political conflict is in fact untenable and actually working against us. So step away. This feeds so beautifully into this conversation about the difference between discernment and judgment, because judgment is looking at the chess player across from you and making a judgment about their character based on the moves that they make, and just realize that if you're still playing the game, then you're going to want to do that. So, boy. And then the last piece here, the scribe, it really just brings us to the idea that, take the time to study more, take the time to take in more information. Maybe you don't have all of the pieces. Maybe it's time to start educating yourself more, do more research, allow your mind to expand, allow more information to come in that you normally wouldn't allow in. And you can do this in a way that's grounded when you're not attached to the information. If you're attached to the battle, then you don't let in information that contradicts you or what you believe, right? You really don't. You just get up into this space where you're just like, this is where judgment works against us. And it sets us up for not really taking in all of the information about our society, about people's actions, for instance. You can look at it many ways, but it does suggest that there is a great upsweep in mind and study that's being offered to us, but only if we are able to get grounded and bring some cohesion to ourselves, because otherwise we're fragmented, very much so, and still stuck in this battle. But I do feel like we're coming out of it, and there is a growing awareness, again, that even like the conservative versus liberal, it's a uniparty, and this is not new to many people at all, right? I've certainly been on this trajectory for many, many, many years, and the collective is just now, at least in the United States, starting to come to full realization of that, when before it was a very niche type of group that was even entertaining this idea. But it's pretty clear what's going on now. So let's look at the chart today and get some clues, get some idea of what is going to be here to support us astrologically and in the cosmos. So we're looking at today's chart, and I'm going to show the current transits. Now we see here that the moon is in Virgo already. So let's go through this piece by piece, shall we? The moon, before it came into Virgo, was in Leo still, and made a quincunx to asteroid Pallas Athena, right, which is in this 27 to 28 degree mark in Pisces. So it's coming to the very end of Pisces. She's going to station retrograde tomorrow, right, and going to be moving back over, probably meeting Neptune at some point. So, but before that happens, this moon in a quincunx to this position. And what is this? We talked about the quincunx, of course. There's a multiplicity of inspiring potentials when you get to the end of Leo, right? It's like everything rises up, the blood is pumping, the kundalini is rising, right? We are engaged in our creative expression and passion, which creates a space for divine source to move through us, to be ultimately of service. And there are so many. And sometimes it's confusing, like we're really open to the multiplicity of all these experiences. And again, the quincunx here to Pallas in terms of the strategy is that, there is a full abundance of everything we have cultivated that is being illuminated by the full moon, for instance. And so there is confusion on an internal and very personal level with all, coming to the end of Leo. And again, adjusting ourselves to the reality that there is a reason that it's all coming to fruition now, and there's a strategy that we can use, or we can strategically use everything that has come about as a result of our cultivation, right? It's like a garden, a vegetable garden that's in full bloom under the moon. That's where Pallas Athena is. And so everything has come to fruition, and she's going to station retrograde tomorrow. And so then we're going to start going back into more nebulous areas as we move through Pisces again, right? Away from Aries, which is consolidating and solidifying back into some seed point. So, and this was happening overnight, right? Midnight, really. So last night even. And so a lot of confusion, I think a lot of potentials being brought up to our emotional surface, right? To feel, and to the point where it might be confusing. So, and then the moon moves into Virgo, okay, and starts to make connections to, number one, is in an opposition to Jupiter retrograde in Pisces. And this becomes really challenging because, for as much as Jupiter is expanding the space within us, making it really, this is where the you can't hide from yourself type of idea came out, because in some ways, Jupiter is expanding within us this space that is making it really hard for us to hide from ourselves and to hide from our own karma. And Jupiter is an advocate, so it will support us as long as we are adhering to the collective values that Jupiter is supporting and defending. And if not, then Jupiter is like, hey, I'm just going to make it more expansive and a lot harder for you to hide. The moon in an opposition to Jupiter is really kind of it's kind of forcing us out there, right? And there's wisdom and compassion that can come about, but it's only because of the suffering and the isolation that comes from this introversion that Virgo really does represent, the going into our own darkness, to pull away and not be of the earth or of the material world, certainly in it. But in this stage of early Virgo, we're going to start really going within and really addressing our character. And so we do feel right away this tension here of being kind of alone, right, on our little island and being isolated, feeling like we're suffering, and how much, but that's the thing, like wisdom and compassion comes from this place. And for as benefic as Jupiter is, and there is wisdom there's definitely not compassion. So that's the other thing to kind of keep in mind as we go through this moon in Virgo, that what we are leading to ultimately is the compassion that Pisces holds. So, but we have to kind of go through this process of going within ourselves in order to get there. From here, the moon comes into a sextile with Mercury, which is now in Cancer. And again, we are really being tested, but we have guardian angels, right? And help and protection in times of crisis. This is the first real stable element of the Virgo archetype, right? The third degree, 2 guardian angels, right? And you can take that literally if you want. It also does show that within us, there's inner strength that we can call upon and apply that to where Mercury is, which is we're really getting tested in terms of our conversations, in terms of our travel, and our movement, in terms of the way we conceptualize reality. This is a testing of the will from a mental perspective, and we can apply this internalized strength that we feel to this process in order to really stand the test. Right? It's not us just alone. It's going to feel like that, but it really isn't. We're constantly surrounded. And then Venus comes into its conjunction with Mars, as you see here, 19 degrees and 48 minutes. This is happening already. This has already happened exact this morning. And so again, the identification with that solar energy that moves through us, that is really the light of source that is accessible to us on an individual level. Venus and Mars coming together, activating this in a very playful way, right? I mean, Leo is very childlike in its pure expression of self, right? Pure heart energy, and very sacred. This is very sacred. You know, this is a sacred ritual in some ways, not ego based at all. And then that is the dark side of Leo, is being conceited, total narcissism, right? Not being able to empathize with people at all, just being totally focused on one's own, you know, that you believe you really are the center of the universe. And children, you know, they need to be taught that they aren't, through modeling of behavior, through allowing them to have experiences of empathy, because that's natural too, right? And it's a process. But yeah, this coming together is very sacred, and is meant to be ritualized, and revering this light within us and exemplifying it in their coming together of their opposition rather than fighting each other. This is a beautiful moment today. Now, like I said, Vesta, you're not going to see it here, but Vesta is in an opposition to Pallas Athena, and Vesta is in the late degrees of Virgo. This is Vesta's wheelhouse in some ways, because Vesta is the fire of the hearth, and she, as a priest, as a goddess, represents her Vestal virgins, her priestesses. Now, this degree is very interesting, this tension here, because while we are getting to a point where we can really step into our power and utilize the power of our will when it's time, the opposition here is the strategy of reaping what we sow, just allowing the abundance to be what it is, or the lack thereof, right? Everything comes to fruition at the end of the Pisces cycle, and there is some strategy here that we can employ that allows us to just hold space for that. The opposition with Vesta is the real challenge, and we have to find our fulcrum, right? We have to find, just like here, this opposition with the moon and Jupiter. We don't want to be totally isolated alone on our own rock. In you know, I am a rock, I am an island. Yep, that can really be strong with the moon in Virgo like that. Completely not only introverted, but absolutely just pushing everybody away. We don't want to, but we also don't want to rely on some outside force to save us. Jupiter in Pisces, even though Jupiter rules this space and is expanding within us this space, and showing us the need to exercise some measure of caution, right? Once this space is so open-ended, and we are able to be seen. Able to be seen by those who are trying to get something from us. We can't rely necessarily on Jupiter all the time to save us and be our advocate and benefactor, but we also don't want to totally isolate ourselves either. So this fulcrum, again, it's finding the tension in the opposition and harnessing the power by finding the balance point. Same thing with Vesta and Pisces. In this area, Vesta over here in late Virgo, Pallas in late Pisces. This tension here, it's important that for our own ability to be of service, we do eventually have to step into our power that we can gather as a result of our conditioning of ourselves, right? And giving, and to give of that in service, and the strategy to just allow things to naturally come to fruition is really causing some tension here. And if we can find that midpoint, I think that that's going to be very beneficial, especially when Vesta moves into Libra and it starts to become much more about the balancing of our relationships and the collective relationship. And then Pallas Athena goes retrograde, and we have to go back into this nebulous region of Pisces to maybe try it again, right? Try it again. While at the same time, we are putting a lot of energy and focus into balancing things out, right? The form, applying our knowledge and our spirit to create the form of balance. That's what Libra represents. And finally, the moon comes along throughout the day and comes into a square with asteroid Juno and a square with the nodes, right? So we have a mutable square, and that would make it a T-square when we have the nodes involved, right? You have the opposition here, and then both nodes are in a square to the moon in Virgo. And like I said before, they are in direct conjunction now with Antares, the south node in Sagittarius, and the north node now, and they've moved into the next degree. So the energy of the nodal axis is shifting into the previous degree, and Aldebaran is success through integrity and Archangel Michael. The south node is Archangel Uriel, the fire of God, and the heart of the Scorpion at Antares, okay? So, and the moon is what helps us find that midpoint of tension with the nodes, especially with Juno on top of the south node. So the betrayal and the sting of the Scorpion is really, really powerful right now. And where is the moon at 9 degrees Virgo? Now think about this, 2 heads looking out and beyond the shadows. It is, in fact, the real inspiration for today's transmission title, The Growth of True Understanding. It's born out of the transcendence of duality, even while immersed in the world, okay? This is being in the world, but not of the world. You are able to come out of the duality while simultaneously being in the duality and seeing things from true understanding. Because true understanding only comes when you when you are familiar with and accept both sides of the equation. This is where the Queen of Wands comes back into play in balancing of the contrast. Our true power comes from the balancing of these contrasts, and we can't do that when we are in a resonance or a frequency of judgment there, because we don't truly understand the other side of where we are. So you can see how all of these things are coming into play. So when we are facing the betrayal, if we are facing the past experiences of the sting of the Scorpion and being, the thing is that this degree of Sagittarius, even though it is in fact in conjunction with Antares, it also, as far as Sabian symbols, it really represents like the way that we are kind of deceived by theatrical representations of opportunity. And it gets people to force themselves into positions that they otherwise may not, because like I said, it's a dramatic theatrical representation of all we could do. This is how we get caught. It's how we get caught. And it's our job to transcend this rather than being steeped in it. And the sting of the Scorpion is so directly connected to all of this today. And if we have engaged with the theatrics of it instead of truth, we are going to get stung so bad. And you can see this. It's coming out in all ways. The most minute interactions in your personal life up to the world stage, it is making itself known. But the other thing too, with the North Node in this position at Aldebaran is, like I said, is now in its own new resonance. And this is about a nosedive, an airplane performing a nosedive. Oh, you know what I mean? Like our ability to challenge nature and play with danger. This is where we're headed now. Okay. This is where we're headed. We were in this resonance of a new lands opening, right? And you have to understand that the nodes, the lunar nodal axis moves naturally in a retrograde fashion in reference to everything else, because while we are, it's based on what we're moving around the sun. And so these nodal points are moving in an opposite direction because they're not actually moving. It's based on the rotation and the movement of the moon around the earth at the same time. Anyway, so we're moving in a retrograde fashion naturally where we're going. And this is really, we can really challenge nature. do we have the ability, the superior ability to do this nosedive, right? This is where we're headed. This is where we are being pulled collectively in order to evolve. And sometimes, and this really does suggest that we are coming into a time where we're going to start making some plays, right? And really going for it. But right in this moment, we're just now getting into this space. Right in this moment, we're really being cautioned and invited to start prepping within with this moon in Virgo. And it's also squaring this nodal axis, the whole nodal axis. It's squaring the north node as much as it's squaring the south node. So again, the true understanding that comes out of transcending duality while still being in it is probably some of the hardest work we're ever going to do. But if we can really do that, I feel like that we'll have so much opportunity for growth with today's astrology. It's really very, it's actually very powerful and potent, but only if we take full advantage of it. Otherwise, we're going to kind of push everybody away and kind of push away our responsibility and use that introversion as an excuse not to engage with the world around us. So tomorrow, like I said, Pallas Athena is going to station retrograde. The moon will still be in Virgo all day tomorrow as well. And there'll be plenty to talk about then as well. But I just want to leave it there for today. Thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. If you're interested in a reading, you can book through Catalyst Energies. The website is linked in the description box below. Of course, you can connect on Telegram and Facebook if that is something that speaks to you. And this is, I post these whenever I'm going live. There's going to be changes coming, and I know I've been talking about that for a minute. I do have family issues. I might as well disclose it now. I mean, some of you who know me personally know what's going on, but my dad was he was diagnosed with lung cancer not that long ago, and his prognosis is actually not terrible, thankfully. And so he's going to have his surgery. He's having a major surgery on Friday of this week. He's having a lobectomy, which means they're completely removing the top half of his lung, the top lobe of his lung, his right lung, in order to remove all of the malignant tumors that are there. And so as long as his lymph nodes are clear, it's one of those situations where it could have easily been really not good, because lung cancer is really hard to, there's not a lot of in between in staging of lung cancer. So it's either prognosis is good and it's stage 1 and they catch it early enough and they can just remove it and it hasn't metastasized. But a lot of times people are already in stage 4 when they have a diagnosis finally, because there's not a lot of preventative screening that you can access unless you already have other stuff going on, family history, you have other lung problems, or you just happen to get lucky enough to get an x-ray that a doctor is like, we should check this out more, which was in my father's case. So it's really hard for me to commit to anything right now in terms of growth of my business and my practice until those situations, I don't want to say resolve themselves, but I'm trying to make myself available for this process, because that's why I'm here. And there's a lot of family karma and ancestral karma and some very significant karmic contracts that are involved in this situation. So once that situation finds much more of a stable footing in terms of what to expect in the long term, then I feel like I'll be able to move forward to utilize Twitch as a platform for streaming, getting much more engaged with teaching starseed astrology to people, having groups, private group calls for specific starseed locations, and really having some deep conversations that it's hard to have anywhere else without being completely inundated with either infiltration or bots or people who it just allows for a much more honest and vulnerable to be in these private kinds of chats. So I want to offer that as well in the future. So, and people have been asking for it. So anyway, that's a little bit about me personally. So just to let you know that the next week or so is probably going to, be it's gonna be a little weird. And my energy is certainly splintered right now. So just keep that in mind as well. And thank you for being here. Appreciate you so much. And I will see you tomorrow for the daily. Take care of yourselves. Bye, guys.